Hi, my name is Selena, and welcome to my mid-year book Freakout Tag 2022 edition. I'm gonna do this quickly because sun's setting, I'm losing light, I've been filming for hours, you know the drill. So let's get into it. The first question is the best book you've read this year so far. I have that right here. I'm not counting sequels, by the way, and I think it's got to go to Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I just loved this because I related to it in so many ways. We have a character whose name is Dora, who only has half a soul in Regency, England. And so what that means for her is that she feels emotions differently and less intensely than other people. And so she doesn't have the same social skills and cues that everyone else does. So she finds it hard to navigate a society that is so full of social propriety and things like that. And so it's a very short book about her, and it is a romance between her and someone who I loved. It was very it gave me Pride and Prejudice vibes. It's not a retelling of Pride and Prejudice, but we do have a bit of a jerk hero who is kind of like a jerk at first, and then he kind of, shows his more true colors, or just grows on you. And then we also have this magic element that I loved. It reminded me of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is one of my favorite books. Don't get me wrong, I don't recommend this to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell fans, or at least not all of them, because it is more heavily focused on romance and soft magic rather than just what would a world look like if you added magic here. It's not really like that. It does deal with Regency England's problems that most Regency books didn't deal with. Like Jane Austen books didn't look at poverty, they didn't look at war, and this book does look at both of those things to some extent. Anyways, I just really loved it. It's probably gonna be one of my favorites of the year. So far, I think it's my favorite non-sequel that I've read this year. I really loved it. I related to Dora. This was good. I just read it too. Very happy that I get to put it in this now. Then the best sequel you've read so far, I definitely think that that's got to go to Exile by Shannon Messenger. This is the second book in the Keeper of the Lost City series. I'm currently reading the third book in the Keeper of the Lost City series, but I still think the second one is my favorite so far, just because the stakes were so high. It managed to be a sequel and also have a complete arc, and Shannon Messenger writes so well when she's writing a couple of days or a week or two of really tense emotional stuff happening, and it deepened the plot, it deepened our character development, and it had so much emotional high stakes. I loved Exile. It also was very different than the typical middle grade plot. I think Keeper of the Lost Cities was more following that plot vibe, and the rest of the series, from Exile and Everblaze, I can tell it's not going to be that at all, and I'm super excited. But some other runner-ups, I would say, are actually, let's pull the one that's making my bookshelf look pretty. Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden was really great. One of my favorite low fantasies ever. I don't know if it's my favorite in the series anymore, because Bear on the Nightingale was just so good and so quiet, and Winter of the Witch was less quiet, and I think I'm more into that quietude of Bear on the Nightingale, but Winter of the Witch is definitely my second favorite. And then, of course, I read the second and third volumes of Heartstopper this year. So I didn't read the first one this year. I read that a couple years ago, and then I continued with a student, and I didn't love the first volume, but the second and third ones with that student, reading them with her, made me obsessed with the series, and I like those better than volume 4, because volume 4 very much seems like it's connecting two different parts of the series. But volume 2 and volume 3 were beautiful, perfection, 5 stars. I loved them. Number 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but want to. I have all of these books, and I'm not going to go and get them because I just put them away. I did a book haul with most if not all of these books. But the 3 that I narrowed it down to, there's quite a few that I want to get to that are new releases. But Daughter of the Moon Goddess is one by Su Lin Tan. I got this book back a few months ago, and it came out in January. I still haven't gotten to it, but I hope to get to it soon. It's in my TBR jar, so whenever I pull it, I will get to it. And I know that that's a kind of retelling of the moon goddess story in Chinese mythology, but it's about the daughter of a moon goddess, and I don't know much else. The next one is A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross, which came out in February, and it sounded great. It's this low fantasy, atmospheric. I was gonna get to it in June, but I just didn't get to it, so I put it back in the low fantasy mug, or the fantasy mug that I will pick from each month. So hopefully I'll read it soon. Definitely before the end of the year, I will get to both of those. And then when I made this list, I didn't know I'd be reading it in July because I just pulled it from my July TBR. But The Girl Who Fell Beneath the Sea is my new release my final new release I haven't read yet but want to. This is retelling a Korean myth about a girl who sacrifices herself to a sea god in place of another woman in her village. And this one's YA, the other two are adult. I'm actually gonna be reading this one in July. I'm super excited. Your most anticipated release for the second half of the year. You may think that this is the new Sanderson coming out, The Lost Metal. What else would it be? There's other possibilities of what this could be. But the only one that I think is my most anticipated, because I've read the other books in the series, it's a sequel, so I trust the series. Every book has been 5 stars. The only one of those coming out is Silverborn, and that is the 4th book in the Nevermore series. Last year, I was obsessed with the Nevermore middle grade series. It's one of my favorite series, I would say, at this point, and so Silverborn is definitely my most anticipated release. Number 5, my biggest disappointments, Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. This one, I was excited. I thought I was gonna love this because of how much praise this book specifically has gotten. I mean, Faith in the Fallen gets a lot of praise as well, which is the other series, the completed series that John Gwynne has. But this one has gotten, I feel like, more praise as a first book than Malice does. And I just didn't like it. I didn't think it was that good. I gave it like 2 stars. And I honestly think that there's a chance I could still like Malice, because it seems like the people who really love Shadow of the Gods like Malice a little bit less, or don't like Malice at all. And the people who like Malice were not as into Shadow of the Gods and the sequel. Some people are into them all, but I'm hoping that I can still like Malice. Number 6, biggest surprise of 2022. I have a couple for this, and they were all, I think, yeah, pretty much all read pretty recently. The first one I will say, Redwood and Ponytail by K.A. Holt. This was pretty surprising because it's a novel in verse. I read it with my students. I was teaching this novel in book groups, and so I read it with them. It was very awesome. It was just this beautiful novel in verse that was just so good about these 2 girls who were queer, and they found out they had crushes on each other. You saw them develop crushes on each other. They're in middle school, and you kind of see them dealing with that within themselves, with each other, and with people around them. And it was just this beautiful, poetic novel in verse. I absolutely loved it. But the other biggest surprises, and I would say these are slightly bigger, is another one of my new series obsessions, A Carne by Lynette Noni. This was free with Audible's catalog. This is an Audible Plus catalog, and so I picked it up on Brightness Katie Reed's recommendation. When I started it, I was like, okay, this is pretty good. It's kind of cute. Okay, whatever. Like, this is good. And then I kept going, and I was obsessed. Like, I shocked myself with how obsessed I was. And then I was obsessed with the second one. And I'm about to read the third one. I'm obsessed. Like, this series is very, like, classic-y, tropey YA, but I love it so much. Like, it fills the void in my heart that I needed for, like, cute friendship YA with, like, portal fantasy and a magical school. Like, it filled that void for me, and I love A Carne. And then the final one that was a surprise that I have to mention because I didn't expect to like it as much as I did, or love it as much as I did, A Song for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. I didn't love To Be Taught If Fortunate, which is another novella by Becky Chambers, and that one mostly focused on things I didn't care about. Like, it focused on world building and, like, ideas about world and science and that, and it didn't really have a lot of character interactions. It had no plot. So I felt very disconnected from that one, but this one is driven by character interactions, and that's why this one worked for me. A Song for the Wild Built is about a T-monk who meets a robot for the first time. This is the first time their species, humans and robots, are meeting in many years, since the robots kind of secluded themselves off, and it just spoke to me, man. Like, it just spoke to me. The way they talked to each other, the things they talked about work and breaks and rest and your identity and how you fit into the universe, and, like, all of these big things that are very intimidating to humans. This was so sweet. And then I loved both their characters. Like, the robot was so cute. My favorite AI, Moss Cap, my favorite robot. And then the T-monk, Dex, is just really awesome. Just this awesome, cool, non-binary T-monk who curses a lot and does no idea what they're doing with their life. And it was very relatable in that way. And it just, I was in pure delight while reading this book, which many of my favorites this year are just going to be the ones that made me the happiest, the ones that gave me the purest delight that I have felt in a while. Number 7, favorite new author, debut or new to you? Okay, so I have a couple answers for this, and they're all a little bit different. So 2 authors that I've read before this year, but they didn't impress me until this year, T. Kingfisher and Michael J. Sullivan. Maybe it is cheating to pick those, but I really was not super impressed with either one of them until this year. And the reason for that is T. Kingfisher, I read A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking. My friend Udi gave it to me. He loved that book, gave it 5 stars. I thought it was cute. I thought it was okay, but it wasn't the best thing ever. I'm still gonna put it in my classroom, but it's not my favorite. And then I read The Raven and the Reindeer in January. Thought it was adorable, so much more my speed. Just a wonderful fairy tale retelling, so sweet. 4.5 stars. And then I was lucky enough, actually I'm gonna keep this down here. I was lucky enough to read What Moves the Dead as an arc and loved it. 5 stars. One of my favorite books of the year. And currently I'm reading Nettle and Bone, and I don't really know that I'm a third of the way through, but I don't know whether this will be like a favorite of the year or a favorite of T. Kingfisher or what rating I'll give it yet, but it's good. And T. Kingfisher, her books just like speak to me. A lot of times they're very fairy tale-esque, like these ones, or they're very dark and creepy, like What Moves the Dead. And so T. Kingfisher just like speaks to me and has such a quirky writing style that I love. I love T. Kingfisher and would like to read more. And because of Nettle and Bone, T. Kingfisher's on a lot of people's list for this one. Michael J. Sullivan. I read Theft of Swords and Rise of Empire last year in the fall. Or actually Theft of Swords in the summer and then Rise of Empire in the fall. And then Heir of Novron I read in January of this year. And the first one, Wintertide, was like good. It was quick. I was like, okay, this first one in this bind up of 2, like it's good. It did a lot with the second book, where the second book left us off. Or technically the 4th book, the second one in the second volume of this book, of this series. That one left off in a place I was like, what are we doing? And then the first one in this book, Wintertide, was like, okay, like, no, there is a plan, okay? And so it convinced me that there is a plan. And I was like, but it was so short. I was like, oh no, like look at this whole rest of this thing is like gonna be so hard to get through. No, Persepolis, the 6th book in the series, is the best one. Like by far, in my opinion. It is so good. It is just like the exact fun, like classic-y fantasy swashbuckling vibes that I wanted. And so after that, I was super impressed with Michael J. Sullivan, and I've been making my way through his works. I've read all of the Rhaenyra Chronicles, which you can see right here, which is the prequel series that are out. And then I just recently read Age of Myth, gave this 4.25 stars, was super impressed by this. Excited to continue this series, which is in the same world, but at a wildly different time with wildly different characters. So what Michael J. Sullivan does works for me, and I'm excited to see if this series and the only others I have left after this, the Rise and Fall series, also work for me just as well as Royce and Hadrian do. But if those 2 don't count, because I read those authors in 2021 and they didn't impress me then, but I continued with them and they impressed me this year, if that doesn't count, I have an author who I've only read 1 book from, but I'm obsessed, and I will be watching everything that this author does. I've heard there's maybe a sequel to this book, but I don't know if this book needs a sequel. I just think that I need more in the world. Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. So when Travis Baldree does anything else, I will be on that. I like love this sweet slice of life, high fantasy with low stakes about an orc running a coffee shop and reinventing herself. Like that is my bread and butter. This was 5 stars and I was so impressed. So anything Travis Baldree does, like I'm gonna be watching for. I mean, so yeah, if there's a sequel coming out to this, if there's more in the world, if there's more slice of life fantasy, whatever it is, I'll be reading it. Travis Baldree is the author that I am on the watch for most. My newest fictional crush, everyone says this, but we don't get fictional crushes. I think most people don't get fictional crushes anymore. But if I did, I would say it. I'm replacing this with my favorite romance book, or my favorite romance in books. So my favorite romance book I read was Coffee Boy by Austen Chant. This is like a novella about our main character Kieran, who is working at this office. He's a trans intern, and he basically, like, I mean, he has a job, but he also gets coffee for the office. And he's just like so snarky and so proud of who he, or tries to be proud of who he is. And I love Kieran so much, so that was part of the reason why I loved Coffee Boy. Kieran also reminded me a lot of my boyfriend Mason in personality and how they handle being trans within that personality. So loved it because of that. And so in that way, Kieran, I kind of had a little crush on Kieran because he reminded me of my boyfriend. So yeah. But I also just thought the romance that Kieran had was beautiful, and that whole novella was just beautiful. But the romance that I'm probably most invested to see going is one from Age of Myth. It's someone who I ship with Persephone. It's not who I've heard Persephone ends up with from knowing the Rhaeria books, but I'm hoping that they're wrong about that, because they're wrong about everything in the Rhaeria books about their history. So number 9, my newest favorite character. So the newest favorite character that I have, I mean, Persephone is the one I'm most excited to follow, but I don't know that I wasn't like in love with her in this book. The Akarne series, the characters from there, DC, Alex, our main character, and the boys, Jordan and Bear, they really shined in Rhaelia, and I'm just excited to keep going with them. That whole crew is one of my new favorites. Keith from Keeper of the Lost Cities and Sophie herself. I have so many new favorite characters. I love the characters Mosscap and Dex from A Song for the Wild Build. I love the characters in Legends and Lattes. I love Dora from Half a Soul. There's so many characters. Book that made me cry. I haven't really cried this year, but I think the closest would probably be Redwood and Ponytail. Editing Selena here to say this is a lie. The book that had me the most distraught this year was Rhaelia by Lynette Noni, the second book in the Akarne series. Exile had me pretty distraught too in The Keeper of the Lost Cities, but Rhaelia takes the cake. Both of those series are like the hand-shaking meme of like both having the most like devastating second books in series, except Rhaelia is worse. Like, I was just like, it is too early in the series for this crap. Like, what is going on? What are we doing? And I trust Lynette Noni to take the stakes where they need to go. Like, I'm not spoiling anything, I promise, but I trust her to up the stakes of her world for her characters and just put them in the situations they need to be in rather the situations I want them to be in. And another thing is, I really think that Rhaelia had the villain be pretty villainous. Like, this guy's evil. Like, he's pretty bad. I mean, Dracora, the third book, revealed some stuff about him that I was like, oh, this is pretty stupid. But then before all that, I was like, dang, this guy, like, I hate him. Like, I am disturbed by him. Like, he's scary. And it was because of his actions in Rhaelia that was very disturbing to me. So Rhaelia had me distraught. I almost didn't give it 5 stars because I was so mad and I was so upset. But I did end up giving it 5 stars because any book that wrenches that kind of emotion out of me deserves it, you know? Yeah. A book that made me happy, obviously Heartstopper. I haven't shut up about Heartstopper. That's such a happy, fun graphic novel series that also has difficult parts in it, but again, that's fine with me, and I'm okay with that. And that series also helped heal a little bit of my like queer soul. But the other one, of course, is Legends and Lattes. How do you read this book and are not happy? I don't know. Number 12, my favorite book to film adaptation you've seen this year. I have to say TV. I haven't seen any book to film adaptations this year, but Heartstopper I watch. I don't watch very many movies or TV, but I obviously watched Heartstopper because I got obsessed with Heartstopper literally right before it, and I was super excited and I loved it. It was a great TV adaptation. What I will say, I think that the Nick and Charlie romance is done better in the books, even though I love Nick and Charlie in the show. But I think the friendship group is explored more in the show, and that is the best part of the show. Most beautiful book you've bought or received this year. I don't want to go get Daughter of the Moon Goddess, so here's a picture of it. And then the Gallant edition, so the Illumicrate edition, this is the cover, and then these are the sprayed edges. I've put the desk cover on the regular version. I love this cover, and I love the sprayed edges, so that would probably be the one that is closest for me to get right now, but I just did a book haul, so I have tons of beautiful covers in that book haul. I'll link the book haul. What books do you need to read by the end of the year? This is the final question, and I have a list. I've put together a list. So for series I need to finish, I would like to finish Keeper of the Lost Cities. I'm on book number 3 right now. I would like to be caught up for that one by the 9th one coming out in November. The Midyear Chronicles I would like to finish. That is the Search of the Carne. I would like to re-enter the Lady Trent series, and also I would like to re-enter the Temeraire series. I read both of those first books a while ago, so I read Temeraire last year, and then I read Lady Trent like before booktube. Like, it was probably the first high fantasy that I ever read. And then I would like to finish Michael J. Sullivan's works that are out so far this year. I would like to finish Mistborn Era 2, and I would like to read more of the First Law. I would like to get to Age of Madness this year. I don't know if I've committed to reading all the standalones, but I'd like to read Age of Madness. And then for series I want to start and finish by the end of the year, the Live Ship Traders series, which I'm starting in July again. And then the Queens of Renthia, which I think will be in the fall. I'm going to read that in the fall. So those are the books that I need to read by the end of the year. There's plenty still on my TBR that I will get to, but those are the ones that I'm mentioning. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you next time. If you want to do this tag, consider yourself tagged, answer the questions in the comments, tell me specifically what your favorite book of the year is so far, and tell me your biggest surprise. I will see you next time. Bye.